everybody, welcome back to 366 Days of Hope. My name is Pearl, and I'm here to share our next topic, which is leave and cleave. So I was reading Mark 10, and one of the first few sentences that I read was talking about how the Pharisees questioned Jesus about marriage. And they asked him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? And basically, Jesus responds by saying, it is because of the hardness of your hearts that Moses was allowed to write that. And I just thought, wow, like it is because of the hardness of our hearts that divorce is allowed, which makes me wonder what Jesus really intended and wanted for us to understand about marriage. And as you continue reading on, he goes back to Genesis and says, in the beginning, God created male and female. And he says that a man is to leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. He then reestablishes the order of which a family is established. So a man and woman become one flesh, is what he continues to say. And when they become one flesh, he says, let no man separate what God has put together. And it is only because of the hardness of our hearts that that separation is allowed. However, if the marriage is dissolved, not for the right purpose, he then says that whoever marries that woman or man commits adultery. They commit adultery by marrying because they weren't willing to work out their problems and resolve it to try and establish and strengthen their marriage. They weren't willing to go through the trials, weren't willing to sacrifice for each other. And as I kind of meditated on this, and I think that there are definitely, sorry, my kitty's right here on my lap. He's just wanting to rest. But I think what Jesus was really trying to establish with us is he wants us to have successful marriages. He wants us to understand what it truly means to sacrifice, because that's what he did for the church. He sacrificed all. He laid his life for the church. And we have to be willing to do that within our marriage. And the importance of leaving cleave is because it establishes the circle or the unity and sanctifies that unity to remind us what unity with God is like. It sanctifies that unity with him, that we are not to separate ourselves from God when we go through problems, when we go through difficulty. But also, we're not allowed to allow anybody to get in between us and God. The same way we're not allowed to allow anyone to intervene or interfere in our marriage. This reminds me of the culture in Korea of a lot of the women that I met, where they would talk to me about how their mother-in-law was interfering in their marriage. They would say things to their son, and their son would be upset with the wife, and it would just be on the cyclical cycle, or it would cause a rift in between the relationship because either the mother-in-law doesn't think that the daughter-in-law is worthy, or etc. But when you look at the biblical narrative, it says that the man leaves his mother and father, cleaves to his wife. Cleaving is like clutching. It's holding on to something. He has to hold on to his wife. He doesn't hold on to his mother and father. And there's a reason for that. Because the same way the mother and father are supposed to cleave to each other, because they are who they have. When the child goes off, they're going to create their own family. And the only person that you have is your spouse. Your spouse is going to be your everything. They're going to be with you through everything. And that's the type of relationship you want. You want them to be able to go through the highs and lows with you. And they're the ones who are going to help you through sickness and in health. But your children are going to have a lot of different responsibilities that they've got to accomplish, helping and being with their own children. It's not to say that they aren't to help out their parents. It's not like that. But the parents are not to meddle in the relationship between a husband and a wife when it pertains to their kids. And this reminds me of one of my friends. So my friend married interracially. So the husband's Korean, my friend's Filipino. And my friend told me this story of how basically the mother-in-law was complaining about her. And she overheard her husband stop his mom in her tracks and said, "How would you feel if you went to her country and what you are doing is being done to you?" Do you know how difficult it is for someone to go to another country, have to learn their language, have to learn their culture, and then now they're married, and then their mother-in-law is disrespecting them and saying bad things about them? How difficult is that for them? And when he turned it around and did that, his mother was quiet. And you might be thinking, oh, that's so disrespectful to say those things to your mother. But in fact, it's actually the biggest praise. And here's why. Because she taught her son to respect marriage. That is honestly probably the most elevated form of respect, is how you treat your spouse because of how you were raised. Or maybe not raised. But either way, I just thought, wow, his dad must feel so much respect because he's saying, I'm protecting my marriage because dad protects his marriage. Because maybe that was something he saw he needed to do. And this is something now as an adult he's doing. What an amazing thing to see a young man step up to the plate and say, no, this is not acceptable. I'm putting boundaries because my relationship, my marriage is so important to me. Because that's the one thing I was taught. I was taught that marriage is vital, it's important, and it's sanctified, and it is to be honored. He honored and respected his parents. And I think that is so important when we look at the principle of leave and cleave. God honored this, Jesus honored it, and he sanctified marriage. He wants marriage to be brought back to this elevated form and put in its place the way it originally was meant to. But I think we've gotten too comfortable in allowing too much or too many people to meddle in our relationship, which then affects the holiness and the peace that was meant to be there. And so it wreaks havoc, and we get distorted, dysfunctional marriages because of it. My encouragement is, if you decide you want to get married, make sure that you are really doing everything you can to protect what you have been given. And I'm mainly speaking to the men, because men, you create the precedence of what's important to the marriage. And when you don't defend your wife, she will lose confidence in you as her provider and as her defender. That is a place in which God has upheld you to. And so I think it's so important that you do that. And so this was something that I thought was just really beautiful, that, you know, throughout scripture you read about marriage and relationships, and really taking the time to contemplate and read through it, you really see the heart of God and how Jesus was trying to, you know, share that sentiment with the rest of us and saying, this isn't what marriage was supposed to be like. Marriage is supposed to be this way, but it's been so distorted. So let me explain it to you. And I think in the next video, I'll talk a little bit about my perception regarding, you know, overcoming the brokenness part of marriage. And I really believe that there's a lot of marriages that have gone through a lot of brokenness, but I really feel that it will take a lot of humility and a lot of humbleness to be able to overcome and make it through all of the tough times. But with that said, guys, may you live, thrive, and be healthy and continue to have healthy relationships. Take care. Bye.